Hey guys, welcome back to MovieBuffs, a podcast where we analyze and dissect movies from Kenya and around the world.
Yeah, guys, welcome back. Super excited always to have you here. This episode's a cool one. It's our second official Rewind Down episode. If you guys are new to the podcast, welcome again. And if you're unfamiliar, our Rewind Down episodes are where we look at one episode of television and do a deep dive analysis on them while drinking a little bit of vino. And today we have our usual, our Cullenberg, Cape White, lovely blend. Highly recommend Cullenberg. If you want to sponsor us, we are happy to accept your money and happy to rep your brand. We love it. Shall we do a quick cheers before we get into it?
We're happy to accept a case of wine as well.
Oh, we're very happy. We'll take samples. We'll take trips to vineyards. We'll take all of the above.
Yeah.
So to that, cheers.
It's a great wine.
It's a great wine, crisp, right? It's a good like daytime wine, I would say.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
a good daytime, like early evening. You know, light pasta, bite tunes, that kind of wine. Highly suggest. So before we get into the episode, let's talk about how we feel about the Kenyan TV and film industry. So, context, we're actually going to be reviewing our first piece of Kenyan content today. We're really excited about it. We've been dying to do it. We wanted to find the right thing. We wanted to find a show or a movie that we really connected to that was something different and fresh that we could talk about. So, yeah, that's today. But I think before we get into that, it's important to give context to where we're coming from as we're analyzing. where we're coming from when we analyze, like, that's not a word again. Let's try it again.
Analyze.
That's after one sip of wine. One sip. Yeah, so I think it's important to give context before we dive deep into this show, into this episode.
Yeah.
So as we've probably mentioned before in the podcast, Will and I are Kenyan, but we didn't grow up here, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff about Kenyan culture that we're kind of learning as we go, for sure. Would you say that?
Yeah, most stuff.
Yeah, I think living here as adults, definitely, like, there's a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're learning what real life looks like here as real functioning people, which, when we were living in Kenya, we were in high school, we were young, so that's a whole other experience. So there's so much for us to learn. And I know, at least for me, in my household, my parents didn't really, like, show me, we didn't, like, watch Kenyan movies. And also, this is a young industry, so there hasn't been a whole lot of content coming out from Kenya in that regard over the last, like, couple of years. You know what I mean? In the last decade. So growing up, there wasn't really a precedent for, like, watching Kenyan stuff because there really wasn't that many. So I think instinctually, I don't really gravitate. I don't even know where to go to get that kind of content.
Yeah, that's actually true. I guess, these days there's, like, Showmax and Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in the day, when I wasn't living in Kenya and I was young, I found it hard to find like Kenyan movies and TV shows to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did watch a couple, a few, but yeah, I think like these days it's so much better that there's a lot more films that are being made in Kenya, TV shows and all that, and like with support from like Netflix, Showmax, those kinds of places.
Yeah, it's so cool to see. Our stories and Kenyan storytellers getting like a global platform. That's really exciting. And yeah, I think accessibility is so much easier now, like how you're saying, right? So thankfully we have access now and we are finally starting to get to know what's coming out here. There's so many exciting new things, including the show that we're talking about today, Crime and Justice.
Right.
Yeah, we picked the show partly because you guys had voted for it. You guys said that you were watching it. So we're like, okay, like, let's tap in. And I gotta say, really strong pilot.
Yes.
Really strong pilot.
Yeah. So we just watched the pilot episode.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be discussing today.
Yes.
And yeah, we enjoyed it. I've actually been looking forward to watching this show for a while, and I just honestly never have because I haven't had Showmax. Actually just checked out Showmax for the first time this week.
Yeah.
So quite late on that. But
we're late to the game.
Yeah, quite late on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really I remember hearing about this show like couple years ago, seeing like previews for it like all around. I've seen billboards for it, and I've never seen like a properly made like cop type of show from Kenya before. Like of course we've had like stuff like from back in the day that wasn't really on this level, but yeah, so I was really excited to watch this.
Yeah, I was excited too. I love a good like Law and Order type of show. I think there's it sounds weird, but there's a level of like comfort that comes with that kind of TV show. Like to me, I think about like Law and Order. I think about like CSI, like the kind of shows that you kind of watch like not like to pass the time, but also like for easy watching because you kind of like it's cheap thrills. I think is the best way to describe it, right? Like I think it feels familiar. There's gonna be like some fun drama. There's gonna be a fun twist. Like the formula is very familiar and very comforting and very satisfying, I would say, as a viewer, right? Like something happens, somebody usually dies. Then now these detectives come and they have like their own internal stuff going on that's kind of like always in the background. They come to solve this murder. There'll be twists and turns, but they'll eventually solve it. Maybe something will happen, maybe something won't, but there'll be some sort of conclusion to it. So it's a comforting format.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Like how you said like how the shows usually go and all that, like the vibe of these shows.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to check this out, and since it's like a show from the perspective of like police officers or detectives in Kenya, I thought that's really cool because I'm a huge fan of The Wire.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best cop show that's ever been made ever. Yeah. And nothing will ever come close. But I really enjoyed The Wire because you see how like how like cops like are like around amongst each other, like what you were saying, and like how they like what they actually go through to like like solve these cases and do everything that they do. So seeing it with Kenya with police that I'm actually familiar with is like really interesting. It's funny, and it's also like it's just like it's cool to see that.
Yeah.
It's cool to see that.
And see within the nuances of Kenyan culture too is really cool because obviously like, the police doesn't have the reputation for being the most, upstanding citizens. Like there's a lot of issues within the department. And so I think I'm really curious to see how they explore that and continue to dive in deep. Yeah. But before we get to all that, should we talk about the episode?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, cool. So Will and I were good hosts this week, and we took diligent notes on the episode. So I'm going to go ahead and read a quick log line for some of you guys if you don't remember what the episode was about. In the first episode of Crime and Justice, Silas and McKenna investigate the gruesome murder of Abuya, a university student who was entangled in an illicit affair with the powerful politician Barasa. It's a case that has been ripped from the headlines and touches on topics that Kenyans are familiar with, the common practice of keeping a mistress, as well as femicide and gender-based violence. Yeah, I thought it was a bold subject matter for the pilot, and I loved that. I loved that there seemed to be a really seamless interweaving of culture and crime in this episode to me, which really I think rang true. I was really intrigued by the treatment of the affair, how people handled it, how people inside of it handled it, and then how they showed the outside, like the outside community handling it as well. It really, I was like, this is really thought-provoking and a really bold choice. I really appreciated that.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, I thought it was super good. So I think like starting from the beginning, this episode has some really beautiful B-roll shots of Nairobi. I was like, wow, these are like really beautiful shots. Like I thought they were really great. Stunning locations.
Yeah.
Really stunning locations.
Yeah, it has really nice locations, like that place where they have the courthouse.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I'm wondering what that is, but
we were like trying to pinpoint where things were, but some of the things we couldn't really tell. Like Barasa's house, the politician, it looked like it was like, somewhere Gigiri sides, like around like there. Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and like one thing I enjoyed was the just like the production quality. It did justice to make you really feel like you're in Nairobi.
Yeah. Definitely for sure. I definitely felt like we were in Nairobi. I felt like they did the setting justice for sure. I will say aesthetically, I wish that this pilot had been a little bit darker. I think when I watch like a cop show or when I watch like, like a crime show, a thriller, whatever, I kind of want, maybe not everything, but I want there to be kind of like a darker aesthetic, right? Like you kind of want it to be like intense and everything is dark. Most things happen at night, like that kind of stuff. Like you want to have a menacing kind of feel and a menacing color scheme, right? Yeah. Like I want to see deep blues, dark. I want it to be like in the shadows, like, ooh, you know what I mean? But everything happened pretty much in the daytime, which I think, I don't want to say it completely cheapened the intensity of the plot, but it cheapened it a little bit to me. Because I was just like, I wanted to be... I
didn't notice that. It was actually during the day the whole time.
It was very daylight. Like, I wanted to be scarier. And I wanted there to be... I wanted to feel the intensity of like, oh, like, like, what are the stakes of them calling out this popular politician? You know what I mean? Like, I wanted it to feel intense. I wanted them to feel like they were in danger. Like, I wanted there to be a little bit more intensity. You know what I mean? It felt a little safe sometimes aesthetically to me, and then also in some of the performances, which we'll get to for sure.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I also feel like the vibe could have been like a bit darker, a bit grittier, but I'm interested to see more of the show, just to kind of see like where things go and how things change in that regard, you know. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. But I thought it was a solid pilot to just like introduce us to like what we can expect from the show and all that. Yeah,
right. So why don't we first talk about the plot itself, then maybe we can go to like the performances and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So the plot we've already discussed. There's this university student Abuya. She's been found murdered somewhere in Karura Forest. And so then it turns out she was having an affair with this politician who she was interning for at the time. And then we see the politician, be charged, go to trial, then eventually be charged not guilty. Yeah. That's like the highlights of the plot. So here's my one issue with the plot. While I do admire the subject matter, because I think it really is important to discuss like gender disparities and gender violence in Kenya, since it's such a big thing and a prevalent thing. Yeah. I wish that the reveal of Abuya's affair with Barasa happened later. Like, I wish that we had seen the dead body and then seen them like talk to like her friends, her old boyfriend. Like, I wish that there was more of a reveal about her affair. It seemed like we learned of the affair like pretty much at the top of the episode. Yeah. And I get why they did that, right? Because I think the whole thing is that like, infidelity is such a part of the Kenyan social fabric. Like, it's not. Everyone knows, right? Like, it's not a big deal. Everybody cheats. Like, that was kind of like the vibe. Mm-hmm. But I kind of wish that there was more of a build up to that reveal. You know, maybe like, I wish maybe like if they had lingered on maybe the boyfriend being the suspect, maybe then it was like, oh, maybe she had a friend who was like jealous of her position or something like that. Like, there were no real suspects, right? Like, it was immediately Barasa the entire time, right? And then it was just about them like getting him. I wish that there was more of like could it have been him? Could it have been that person? Could it have been them? You know what I mean? And have that be more of a build up, and then have that be the end of the episode, or towards at least the middle, like something to like build it up so that it's like oh shit, like, you know what I mean? Because we knew who it was the entire time, and that to me felt a little dissatisfying as a viewer. I had wished that there had been more of an intrigue. Like, I wish that there was an actual like investigation, like to who did it. Right. Yeah. I feel you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like there wasn't much of a mystery for for us watching. Exactly. It wasn't that much of a mystery. Yeah. And that would have been a bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think because, in a show like this, right, where you're following the perspective of the detectives, you want to solve it alongside with them. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to know what happened to her at the top. I want to be like with the detectives, like following, okay, like, all right, like, okay, we think it's this person for like the first 10 minutes and we think it's this person. Like, I want to go on that same arc as a detective would. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I also think, what else? I did like the end twist of the wife being the actual killer. Granted, I did see it coming from a mile away, but I'm not mad at that. Yeah, I'm not mad at that, especially like with the journalist who I thought his character was not needed, but we'll get to that. But with him being like, oh, I remember smelling this perfume. I thought that was really unrealistic because like when you're in a panic situation, if you've been kidnapped, like, are you going to remember like the smell? You know what I mean? Like you would have to be really like in a very like calm, collected place.
That was a reach for sure.
It was such a reach. It was such a reach. Like, if you've been kidnapped, you're going to be like, oh my God, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to retain even where you were, let alone what you smelled.
Yeah, I don't really like how that was, like, what got McKenna to, like, figure out that it's, like, the wife was in the van when they were kidnapped. Yeah. And, yeah, you know what I mean? Because she's just like, oh, like, she just asked her, like, what's that perfume you're wearing? And then it's the same one that the journalist had said he smelt because he always buys it for his or he bought it for his girlfriend. Yeah, that being the thing was a bit like, I don't know. It
was sloppy to me.
Yeah.
Sorry to say it.
It was a bit of a reach. Like, it wasn't Like, it's not like, oh, like, that's a huge clue. Like, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, like, you know what I mean? In real life, would that really play out? But anyways,
I think it was unnecessary. I think that they could have had
a different way to.
Yeah, I think they even could have left it open-ended, right? Like, I think that they could have been an exchange between the wife, Zara, I think was her name, and Sarah Hassan's character, McKenna. They could have had like a conversation where she like hints at it. And then that's it, right? Like maybe her, like, you know, like maybe there's like she gives her like a smirk or a look. I think it could have been more coy than what they did. Yeah. You know, then she goes to this scene where she's like crying like Viola Davis crying. Like somehow there's no tears in her eyes, just snot in her nose. I'm like, how do you have one without the other?
She was balancing too.
You know what I mean? And I also thought that was, it didn't really give to me that final scene because she basically, for those who don't remember, she goes to Silas and she's like crying about like why we failed today. Like I kind of wanted Silas's character to have that moment of like, this is the job, right? Because the whole thing is that like the kind of like subplot of this is that like McKenna's new to this division. She's new to this partnership with Silas. And so the realities of this job is fair. We are assumed to think it's new to her. Yeah. So I wish that they had a moment of like him being like, no, this is the job. Like, you think I'm just an asshole, but like, that's what this job will do to you, right? Then the tension is, okay, how does McKenna hold on to her humanity and her morals and what she believes in while being in this job, knowing what it does to people like Silas, who's completely given up. Like, Silas was over it from the beginning. He was like, yeah whatever.
He's like a classic jaded cop.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But instead he was like, yeah, man, see you tomorrow. Like that's just how they ended it.
Just see you tomorrow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think all in all, when it comes to the plot, like, I think, again, the subject matter was strong. I appreciated what it was rooted in and the ties with Kenyan culture and having a good critical commentary on Kenyan culture. Yeah. I don't think many Kenyan shows do that, or from what I have seen. Feel free to educate us on that. And so I appreciated that it was critical of Kenyan culture in that way, because I think that's important for us to evolve as people. Like, we have to be critical of what our culture is, while also celebrating what it is, right? So I appreciated that, but there are just a lot of plot points that I was like, Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I also thought, like, we didn't have to see the whole trial, right? Like, I feel like they could have just, I feel like, let me say, I don't know what the, like, judicial process is here in Kenya, but it seemed like they didn't have enough to, like, charge him with anything. Like, it was just the paternity test. And, like, I was like, okay, he's the father of the child, but, like, put at least thinking from the perspective of American courts, that would not be enough to charge somebody for murder, right? Like, if there was like DNA on the scene, if there was like something more damaging, then like, yes. Yeah. But the paternity test, it was a reach. But again, I don't know, maybe reasonable doubt is easier or harder to prove. I'm not sure about the legality of it all. Right. But I don't think that we need to have the whole courtroom aspect of it. I'm not mad at it. I just didn't think that it was super necessary. I think
they could have spent more time actually just like with the detectives and actually going through like how are they trying to figure this out rather than
especially because like McKenna and Silas as detectives are not involved in like the court process. So to me, I'm like, why are you showing us this?
Yeah, if they're not involved, they're just on the case. So like, it's like they're not even there speaking in court or anything, you know. So it's just kind of like,
the journey should have been to charging him. Then it should have ended with whether he's charged or not. You know what I mean? Because that's the process where they're involved most. Yeah. So small things like that where I'm like, okay, like there could have been some changes, but I think, you know, overall, like we were compelled, like we were interested, like we were watching, like we were engaged. So not a fail at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Should we move on to characters?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, I'm going to start with the McKenna character because I wanted more from Sarah Hassan. Again, I think, you know, we give them grace because this is a pilot episode, right? A pilot, like a show doesn't even know who it is or what it's going to be in its first season.
Yeah, you can't define it, especially not from just the pilot.
Yeah, like, your first season, like most shows, like they're just trying to figure out who they are as a show, what the tone is, right? Yeah. Like if you watch any show that you like, watch the pilot again after watching all the other episodes or watching later episodes. You'll see like it's a very different vibe than probably what you're watching right now because like, you know, it evolves. Yeah. Writers they understand the characters better. They're more in their bag. You know what I'm saying? Like you understand the world better as well. So the first season, we give you grace, especially the pilot episode. But I will say, I think that Sarah Hassan I wanted her to be stronger in this role because it seems like her whole character is like, the strong female cop in a male dominated space. Like, you know what I mean? She doesn't care what anyone says. Like, she's here to like get justice. But like, I felt like she was like, if the mark was here, she was like right under it. Like, to me, she was always right under it every single time. Like, she wasn't selling it. Like, even as a mother with her badass little kid son who kept on like, who's gallivanting, stealing beer and stuff. I wanted her to be more, like, I even felt like she was like soft with him. Like, I wanted her to be more like, I wanted more emotion. I wanted more anger. I wanted more conviction, passion, because that's the character that it seems she's trying to portray, but it kept on under missing for me in the pilot. There are so many moments where like Silas is being an asshole to her and she's like, shut up. That's not what I want from her. I want her to be like, nah. I want her to like even get physical. Like, I want her like, you know what I mean? Like, I want her to like, this is a woman who has something to prove. Yeah. Right? I didn't feel that desperation from her. You know what I mean? I didn't feel that hunger for respect and power from her in this first episode. And I kept on, I was like, oh, come on. Like, you know what I mean? I wanted her to like, and I think that would have also built some much needed tension as well. It felt like she was just kind of like, okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like basically the whole time they're just, making digs at her, like all her colleagues, just her Everybody. Being a woman. Like every new person she meets at like the office is like, oh, like get me can I have a coffee, please? You know what I mean? And it's just like, okay, I feel that. Like I'm sure that's like a reality for like women who work in the police and all that.
Yeah, any industry. Yeah. For sure.
And like, but yeah, like you said, it just like she could have been like given a bit more in terms of like emotional reactions to things and all that.
Yeah, like I want her, I think when you think of like a female cop character, like again, I'm sorry, like it's stereotypical, but this is what I feel like this is what you would want from a female character. Like you want her to be a little bit of a hothead. You want her to be like cold and strong and you know what I mean? Like you want all of those things, and I just felt like it wasn't giving to me. What was giving to me, however, was Barasa, the actor who played Barasa. You know his name?
So he's John C.B. Okumu.
Yeah.
So he's my favorite character. I was just enjoying him, and so he's I guess like one of our very well known Kenyan actors, and he was in The Constant Gardener. Couple other projects. And I was just enjoying watching him on screen because I felt he was playing his part like perfectly. Like I really liked his intensity and the way he delivers his lines. I felt like he had a lot of like he just commanded a lot of like attention on the screen. Like, and like his accent was, I don't know if he talks like that for real. I don't know.
I don't know.
But he has like a rich British accent, like some fancy accent. Like. But like I thought it was just perfect for the character, and he did the character really well so far in this episode.
He did that quiet menacing, like quiet villain thing really, really well. We've talked about this before, right? Like when you're playing a villain, right? Like you can, those over the top portrayals of like, oh, I'm gonna get you. Like it's not effective, right? Like you want, I think listen, I'm not an actress, so like, let me say this so humbly. I think, when you're approaching playing a villain, I always think that taking space and time when you say something, right? Because I think the whole thing about being a villain at its core is that you're cunning, you're calculated. So just letting there be space in between what you say. And paying attention to how you say things. You know what I'm saying? Like that sort of cadence and inflection is really important for that kind of performance. Should I get an Emmy for that?
I could feel it.
You know what I mean? Like, doesn't it make you nervous, right? Because like that's the thing. Like it's about the way that you say the words and the way that they feel in your mouth and the way that you process them. Because I feel like villains are processing things in real time so quickly, and I saw that with this Barasa character. I felt the calculations happening. I felt the way that he was thinking about everything that he was saying, and him being a politician, it really worked because that's the character, right? Exactly, like he's not like a hothead. He's somebody he thinks about things. He makes plans. He executes. And that was really it translated.
That was portrayed well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so he was my favorite character just because of that. He just had this like intensity that was like, nah, this is nice. Like,
yeah, he's the strongest performer for sure. I will say the scenes between him and Abuya, I didn't really believe them like having an affair, but like I'm not mad at that. Like I'm like, okay, like it's fine, like it's all right. Like again, pilot episode, we'll give things grace, but I didn't believe it. I will say I did believe it more than I believed Lauren London and Jonah Hill.
Exactly.
I'll believe anybody more than I believe them, but yeah, I didn't fully believe it. But I also think that like that's also thinking about like the kind of affairs of this stature that I've seen before in the past. Like typically if you see like a politician young girl affair, it's usually because like in American television, right? Like it's usually because, and even British, let's say Western television, it's usually the setup is that like it's a young politician, you know what I mean? Like early days in their career for the most part. And then it's like, you know, like there's more of like an age, there's a closest in age there, right? I think that's usually how it's portrayed in the US, because that's more true to what that experience would be like in the US, you know, barring your Monica Lewinsky's and stuff like that. But here that's different, right? Because here, like, that dynamic of an older man and a younger woman is like, we know, is very prevalent here. And so I take that might be like a cultural thing that I expect that might have been that is different, but also just I didn't believe their chemistry a whole lot. But they only had one scene. It's fine. Like it's not like a main part of the plot. These are characters we won't really see again, I don't think. So it's like fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving right along, I think that they could have gotten rid of the journalist character. As a journalist, I was like, this guy. This whole thing, so basically the whole thing is that like they're saying Abuya reached out to this journalist for help. First of all, why would Abuya reach out to press about her her affair that could be very publicly damaging to all parties involved? Like, why would that be her instinct? Like, why wouldn't she go talk to her friends? Why wouldn't she talk to like a trusted confidant? You know, even if it's like not her mom, like a maternal figure or like a like, you know what I mean? It didn't make sense to me that was the person she reached out to for help. And it was kind of confusing because in the beginning of the episode, they say that, you know, she reached out to him to like tell her story. Then it changed. When he was on the stand, he was like, oh, she reached out to me like for help. But that didn't really make sense to me. Like that's in fact probably the last person. That's like Drake being like, oh man, I think I got another girl pregnant. I should go talk to TMZ about it. It makes no sense. Right? Like, why would you do that? It makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense. And then like this whole thing of him like wanting to like save her and help her, like, oh, like I want to just like give her advice and stuff. I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, let me tell you something. If somebody came to me and said, I'm having an affair with Barack Obama, I trust and believe I'd be like, I'm so sorry for your loss as I'm typing the article for Blavity. You know what? Your loss. I don't know why I said your loss. I'm so sorry for your predicament. But I'd be as quickly being like, can that be on the record? You know what I mean? I'm writing about it. You know what I mean? Because as journalists, like that's like, you know, how we go about our career. Like you get the exclusive, like that's what you go for. So this whole thing of him being like, oh, I just wanted to help her. Like, no, what?
Yeah.
No, you're here for the exclusive. You're not her friend.
Yeah.
I didn't really, that fell flat to me.
Also, when they were getting kidnapped, like they're just like walking and then like guys come from behind them and like, so they grab Abuya and they put her in the van and then like one guy is holding this guy from behind, like, and he's even bigger than the guy who was holding him, and then he's just being pushed. Like, I was just like, bro, but then he got out and he ran away. Yeah. But like, yeah, man, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny for sure. I also was like, come on, man. Like right after they met the secretary, you see, there was not a lot of room for intrigue here. Like, you know, if like they had chilled like for some days, then like Abuya was kidnapped or then like the journalist was kidnapped. That, okay. You know what I mean? But it happened right after. So it was really obvious the entire time that it was Barasa was involved. Like it was super obvious.
Yeah. I think the character of the journalists only served the function of being like what helps the cops put together the case, which I think isn't like necessary, you know? Yeah. Like, it would have been cool if they did it in a way of like, oh no, they get clues. It's a dead end, or, you know, like something like that. More of just because this guy, they brought him in for questioning and he was just like, he was like, oh yeah, like he explained why he was with her and all that.
Yeah, in like the first 10 minutes.
And then it's like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I feel like it's a whole lot of telling that could have been shown instead, type of thing.
You said my favorite phrase to writers, show not tell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because to me, I'm like, listen, even thinking of the Abuya character, right? we're told like she's trying to be a lawyer, like she wants to go to law school, full scholarship, like she's a smart, like capable young woman, right? So I think like it would have been more interesting them having to uncover the affair of these two male characters, right? On one side is her politician, affairee, whatever you want to call her, who's quiet and intimidating and powerful. And on the other hand, you have her young boyfriend who's intimidating in a totally different way. He's emotional. He's a hothead. He's like extravagant. Like he's like, like coming up to her house. So I think having that that duality of that experience would have been interesting with the conversation that the episode's trying to have.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so I agree with that. Like I really thought they could have done more with some of these side characters.
Yeah.
Like they went to speak to Abuya's best friend at school, and yeah, it would have been cool for her to, maybe she's a suspect too, you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Maybe they had an argument at the end, like just before or something like that, you know what I mean? Just more things than, so people don't just explain to us everything and then okay, yeah, that's fine. Next person, yeah, they've explained, it's fine, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like with the boyfriend, when they brought him in to interrogate him, see, after he was there crying about like all that stuff, when they were talking to each other now after they interviewed him and he was like inside there, she was like, oh yeah, he's innocent, he didn't do anything.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And then Silas was like, how do you know? And she's just like, yeah man, like just
women's intuition.
Yeah, women's intuition, like literally. And that for me, that was the worst writing. That was like the worst line, because I'm just like they could have done more with that, like instead of just that. Like it almost felt unnecessary.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And like we could have even seen them like go and interview people that work at his office, and then that's how they learn through the affair. Yeah. Like there are stronger ways to reveal the affair, and they could have had more compelling characters, because honestly, like the side characters weren't giving much. Like you said, boyfriend just there crying, best friend just there crying, journalist, why is he here, right? And even Zara, the wife, like, if she's this like calculating wife, like who has this whole plan, I wanted more from her. Like I think it would have been cool if she had pretended to be really upset about the affair, like being like crying, angry at him, like if she had made a whole scene about it, and then it's revealed afterwards that like she actually doesn't give a fuck, she's just trying to like maintain her status, and she's the one who killed her. Like it would have been more interesting to have that flip versus it being like she was very like middle ground the entire time. Like they could have done some cooler things about her character. Again, I understand they want to normalize the affair because like that's the reality of Kenyan culture, but I think it would have been cool if she had this like Machiavellian performance of like, oh my god, like he's cheating on me, and behind closed doors she's like, did you kill her? You know what I mean? Like there could have been some, I wanted more cunning, kind of similar to Sarah Hassan's character. I wanted more cunning, I wanted more calculating, I wanted more menacing, and she's a character who I felt really could have used space and taking time between her dialogue to really like deliver a scary, intimidating, bone-chilling performance, which is what you want from the character, because she's the killer. Yeah.
So like I thought like so obviously since it's a pilot, like I guess they made certain decisions because they wanted to, have like a full episode that shows how the show's going to be, how it's going to be about, what it's going to be about. And so they chose to end the episode with us getting to the point of this Barasa guy going through court, being acquitted. I don't know.
Yeah.
Being being told he's not guilty and all that.
You're right, acquitted.
Yeah, and I thought it would have been like, from what we've just been saying of how these other side characters could have contributed more to like the mystery element of the show and like the suspense. I think since they wanted to end it like that to show here's a whole full episode, we can write a story start to finish. But I think it would have been also great as a pilot if they ended it on like a mystery, a cliffhanger or something like that, something to make us be like, oh yeah, we want more, because it's kind of just, that thing's kind of over. Like at the end of the episode, I just felt like, okay, like So this guy got away with it. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so now are they going to like the next episodes? We haven't watched it, so I'm assuming like, are they now going to like? Is she going to like not be able to like let this go? Is it is that thing continue? It's just over. I think
it's over.
Yeah. So like, if I guess maybe that's not like the main story arc of this season. Obviously, if it's just over from the pilot, but like, yeah, I think like what they did with the pilot could have ended really nicely with like a cliffhanger or like a mystery, something to look forward to figuring out a bit.
Yeah. I think I completely agree with you. I think the script, and I think that some of the side characters could have been tighter and more intentional. I think there's a lot that they could have done without. I think there's a lot they could have brought in to make it more compelling, to have all of those feelings that you're saying that are kind of like missing from it. I think yeah, like I think it would have been great to like. I love that it ended with an unsuccessful case. I think that was the right choice, but I think that could have been done in a different way and in a stronger way.
Yeah.
But again, I think in a lot of ways, solid pilot, solid characters. I thought Silas, the guy who played Silas, Alfred something. I have it here.
It's Munua or something.
Yeah, Munua. You're exactly right. I thought his performance was good. I'm looking forward to seeing him develop that. I think the seeds have been planted, which is what you ultimately want from a pilot.
Yeah.
Seeds have been planted, right?
Yeah, like I said, it gave a good impression for me. You know, I can see what they want to do with this show, like how they want it to be, the vibe of it and all that. And yeah, I thought it was a solid pilot, despite some of the things that we discussed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I thought it was a good watch, and I'm trying to check out more of the show.
Yeah, I think we'll keep with it. No, yeah, check it out. And if anybody at Crime and Justice, if you want to hire us for anything, we're available.
Yeah,
but so yeah, no, for sure.
Thanks so much for everyone who suggested for us to watch that.
Yeah.
Or shout out to everyone who's been watching that show. And yeah, we're definitely gonna check out more of it.
Definitely.
And yeah, so like we said, guys, we don't know about so many Kenyan TV shows and movies.
Yeah, we're learning
right now. So continue to give us more suggestions. We're down to watch anything. We watch movies and everything all the time. So,
yeah. All different kinds of genres. We're super open. I think our next stop might be the Disconnect series. Has the second movie come out yet?
I don't know.
We'll see. We'll check Netflix. But I think it'll be our next stop, because I've been long saying that I've really been interested in like having like a modern Kenyan rom-com. So it seemed like Disconnect is the closest thing to that. So I'm really curious to see what that's about. So, but like Will said, please reach out, give us more suggestions. We're open to learning, right? So anything that we get right, wrong, like we're really open. This is a communal experience. So definitely let us know. Yeah. Before we go, should we do a little cheers?
Oh, I finished mine.
Oh, you finished yours? Okay, so I will drink by myself. See you guys next week.
See you guys.